Hello everyone! Because of the upcoming Zachlike jam, hosted by me, I wanted to look deeper at what actually makes a good Zachlike. So I read Steam reviews, replayed my favorite ones, and reflected on my own games, and I came up with a pretty solid list. Before I start, I just wanted to explain what exactly a Zachlike is. Most Zachlikes are either programming games or machine building games, or both. In broader terms, a Zachlike is a puzzle game with theoretically infinite solutions to each puzzle. Zachlikes are based on systems to manipulate data or objects. They focus on optimization and not finding the solution but coming up with it. Alright, so here's the list. First of all, let's talk about the game's main systems. Be creative. Don't just make another copy of assembly with different graphics. Use a different counting system, or a new way to program, or make it extremely intuitive, or go minimalist and see how few elements you actually need to make a robust system. In fact, the jam's optional theme is minimalism, and I myself will try to make a game with a unary counting system and only 3 commands. Try to make your game's system as intuitive as possible. Sometimes, like with my binary programming game 1000-bit, this simply isn't possible because of the very nature of the premise. You need to know the basics of programming and how binary works. But if you haven't decided on the premise yet, then it's a good idea to make it intuitive so you have a lower skill floor and a more accessible game, and you don't have to teach the player as much before they can start playing. Games like Infinifactory and Octopticon do this very well. Design the different puzzle elements, keywords, machines, circuits, whatever your game requires, thoughtfully. Don't just add commands for the 4 basic arithmetic operations because all programming games should do that. Some of the challenge in Zachlikes lies in figuring out how to use the puzzle elements you have to complete the task at hand. Try to avoid fake complexity or fake difficulty, which is tedious and boring. For example, in 1000-bit, if you ask the computer for a bit that is out of range, it will always return 0. Previously, it returned an error, but my playtesters pointed out that because of that, they would have to write some more code in every single puzzle to return the 0 and not the error, and that's not difficult at all, it's just annoying. Next, a thing or two about puzzle design. This is a very important part of making a Zachlike, and I kind of overlooked it when I made my games. I just thought of different things that could be interesting and added them. Don't do that. Playtest the game. See if the puzzles are actually interesting and not tedious, repetitive or boring. Make sure the difficulty curve is just right with no sudden jumps. Also remember that with puzzles it's always quality over quantity, but more is always better. My buddy Tubular liked my ancient game, the 6-digit computer, but complained that there weren't enough puzzles for him to optimize. Finally, UX or user experience is a vital part to every game, so it must not be forgotten. Make your tutorials as interactive as possible, so it's fun and easy for the player to learn the systems. This is something I've always kinda struggled with, usually due to laziness. Opus Magnum does this excellently, by having a bit of text explaining a puzzle element and then an already finished and working machine that you can turn on and see in action. Don't force your players to read a manual before even starting the first puzzle. However, I suggest that you do create a detailed manual for those who would want it, such as the optimizers. One important thing to keep in mind for every game you make is that your players will always surprise you by just how terribly bad they are at understanding your game. Dumb everything down as much as possible, and maybe, just maybe, some average players might understand your game. Your players will have to use the tools you give them over and over again, so make sure that they're as friendly as possible. Provide hotkeys and shortcuts, make the UI unobtrusive, helpful and easy to use. Try to include debugging functions, such as going forward one step at a time, rewinding, fast forwarding, and so on. Remember to also make your system or code syntax consistent, so that the player spends more time thinking about how to actually solve the puzzle and less time struggling to recreate it and battling the UI. Make sure to check out the Good Design Bad Design series by DesignDoc to find out more about graphic design. Finally, spend some time at the end working on polish, bug fixing and playtesting. If you can, include an infrastructure to create and save multiple solutions for each puzzle. Ensure that the player's first moments with the game will be with fast and efficient learning of the systems, and not reading a wall of text. Make sure the game doesn't crash immediately, and try to test it on different platforms. As with the dumbing down, this goes for every game, but is usually overlooked in game jams. Making a game by itself is relatively easy. Finishing a game is relatively hard. Finishing a good game is painfully difficult, and few have really succeeded in this area. So don't get nervous before making your Zachlike. Ask people to playtest and give you feedback, iterate and improve your game. Remember, the game you will be making in January doesn't have to be complete. You can keep working on it until you feel it is completely finished, and even then you can make updates. Thank you for watching, and see you in January.